which is the best value property? Is it lower price property or is it higher price property? So for example, if you're purchasing something for £100,000 versus something that's say £500,000, which one are you going to make more money out of? Now, some people might think, well, actually, the more expensive property, there's probably more room in that, you make more money. Some people say, no, the lower price property, that's going to produce a better return for you. So it really depends what it is you're trying to do with it. So for instance, if you're just going to, for example, let it out to a family as a single let property or what we call buy to let, then it will also depend on what's the rent you're generating. Now, if they are in a location, let's say the £500,000 properties are more nicer, more expensive location, it may be the rents are higher, and then the lower price property, the rents might be lower. So we need to look at proportionally, we need to compare what's the difference between the two. So the one that's much more expensive, is that making significantly more percentage return on the amount of money you've invested versus the lower one. So you need to base that comparison on its location. Now, location typically will drive what the prices are. On the other hand, it could be the lower price property is in a part of the city that people don't really like living in. They aspire to get out of that area. There's high crime in the area. It's just generally quite deprived. And the higher price property might be in a really nice, desirable area where people aspire to move into. They want to live there. They want their kids to grow up in that environment. Now, those properties over time, generally speaking, the higher price properties, percentage-wise, will increase significantly more in value than the lower price property. So even if the rents were percentage-wise comparable, the first test that we did in terms of what's our return on investment, the higher price property will probably produce much more capital growth. So your overall return on capital over time will be much better on the higher value property than it would be on the lower value property. Now, there's also a school of thought that you could just take the lower value property and you can split that into multiple units, for example, a HMO, and maximize a number of people that are able to live in that property and pay you an income. And so you can sweat that asset and really generate a real high income from a low value investment property. Now, of course, depending on where it is, if it's not in a great area, you're often not going to attract the best tenants. It'll require a little bit more effort, more management as well, but the return will be significantly higher. You might not get the capital growth. So ultimately, this depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. What's your longer term objective? If you're looking for cash flow today, as we talk about, there's three ways to make money from property. You're either creating cash flow, you're cashing out to a property, or you're building equity for the long term. So your cash flow would be your HMO that's generating your income today. Your equity would be buying the expensive property over long term. It goes up in value and you got some profit there. And your cashing out would be effectively you're buying, maybe add some value and selling on. So for example, the £500,000 property, it could be that it's somewhere that you can't really add that much more value to it. The ceiling price is quite limited on how much money you can make on it. Or alternatively, it could be that it's in a really nice location. Properties typically around, they would even fetch £1 million. So then it's likely that you could spend £100,000 on that property, a nice big extension at the back, a big open plan kitchen, a nice big loft conversion, and make it a nice modern property and push up its value significantly. Maybe not reach £1 million, but you can make quite a healthy profit on that. So it depends on the individual property, the location where it is, what you're going to be able to do in terms of cashing out. In the same way, your cheaper property, depending on where it is, if it's a £200,000 property, is it somewhere that you can lift the value? Location is absolutely key when trying to determine whether you're going to be investing in low value properties, in higher value properties, and of course, what your objective is, what is it that you're trying to ultimately achieve?